tonight's webinar is about summer planning. Okay, summer is upcoming. Today is May the 15th, and some of the American curriculum schools, the summer would begin as early June. For some of the UK curriculum schools, it could be end of June. Either way, summer is fast approaching. And so this seminar is dedicated to families who are thinking to make the most out of this summer. Whether or not the family already has planned to utilize this summer, or whether they're still thinking about it, I hope this seminar would give a little bit of an idea of a guidepost to the family, thinking about using this summers wisely. So just a quick debrief on myself for those who do not know me. My name is Daniel Sito. I have spent more than 20 years guiding families in their planning in their education planning towards overseas education, mostly on boarding schools, but also on universities. I'm a boarding school specialist. I specialize in boarding education, sending students to boarding schools across the world. Top schools in America, Canada, UK, and Switzerland, and other countries alike. So I would like to tonight share a little bit of my experience in terms of how I've been guiding families in terms of their summer planning. So next slide, please, Mint. We have a simple agenda, a couple of slides to walk through, and we'll begin right away. So the first slide is begin with the end in mind. Just like all forms of education planning, be it for summer or for regular school year, I always counsel my families, my parents, to begin with the end in mind. Think about what you want to see as the outcome and try to reverse engineer to think about what we need to put in the intermediate steps. Next slide, please. So in that pursuit, I particularly focus on two areas. One is the overall development, the child's development, and the other part would be education planning. So there are two areas especially that we parents should be concerned with when we start doing our planning for our child's development. So one is the lifelong development as a person. What do we envision our child to become as a person, right? Forget about Harvard or Oxford or any of those things, right? Just think about good old development as a person. What do we envision our child to become? What do we, as a parent, what do we want them to become? Next would be the more pragmatic stuff, which is, okay, what country do we want them to study in? And what type of schools do we want them to study in? Here, at this point for the education planning, then we talk about, Harvard or Yale, etc. Now, in the overall thinking, first, we would look into the interests and skills, the extracurricular interests and skills, and we will be considering whether we should help our child to go wide or to go deep. All right, there are two areas of thoughts. One is to expose them to more new things. The other is of some of the things that they're deeply passionate in, help them to dig deep, to dive in. All right, so there are pros and cons, there are logic for either path. And for us as parents, our job is to think it through, which is more appropriate for our child for this particular summer, say, for example. Next, another point of reference would be, do we use this summer to help our child patch a weak spot? Or do we help them strengthen an already strong area? So, for example, maybe my child is a bit shy, all right? And maybe I want to expose him or her to public speaking or to debate, all right? Or to an environment or program that would really encourage my child to speak up. The idea is to patch up a weak spot. Or my child is already very eloquent, is already very interested in debate, thinking about being a lawyer down the road, even. All right. And at this point, I would like to further engage my child into a debate program or into a language program to further strengthen his or her strong area. Then there's another frame of reference which talks about new exposures and experiences, right? Travel could be one, and you bring them to see different countries. There's always new exposure, but it doesn't have to be going around the world. It could be as I said earlier on, going wide on interests and skills. If they get to be exposed to some new skills, new talents, get to develop any new talents, and being able to go through some new experiences, that already is a gain for the child. Remember, children learn best when they are being in touch with new things. If you keep them doing the same thing over and over again, it's not entirely very intellectually stimulating. All right. It is especially stimulating if they are to experience new things, new environment, new exposures. Now, on the other hand, there's always another school of thought that talks about deepening an existing cultural heritage. For example, maybe a child is a third culture child, right? And so the parents an expat living in another country, but every now and then, the family would choose to use the summertime to send the child back to his original country to learn about the cultural heritage, right? I've had some Japanese families who would do that, right? During the summertime, they would send their son, daughter back to Japan to learn about Japan's public education, or just to engage with the society and just to be in touch with the Japanese language and the overall Japanese culture. All in all, whether we're going wide or deep, patching a weak spot or strengthening a strong area, entirely new exposure, or deepening an existing cultural heritage, what we are trying to do is to help our child build confidence. This is really the key. This is really the key of education planning to some extent. Is really to focus on what to do to help our child to develop their confidence, to let them experience that I can do it, right? I can do it, right? So introduce some challenges to them, right? Be it a new interest or skill, or be it, of the current particular talent, challenge them a little bit more, going deeper, right? Challenge them. And to let them overcome those challenges, and to such a degree that confidence can be built. That is the key. For when they start developing confidence in the fact that they can do certain things, they can do it on their own, it leads to a very positive and healthy character development. Right? Students are not shy naturally. Usually people are not born shy, right? I mean, there are, of course, maybe there are some biological traits, but more often than not, being shy is a factor that comes, during the child's upbringing. Right? When a person has enough confidence, when a child has developed enough confidence, they tend to be a lot more comfortable with the environment. They are willing to try new things. They're willing to speak up. They are not as worried about failure. All right. So confidence building is key in all education planning. Now, if we are also thinking about sending our child to a boarding school, boarding education is something that is at the mind of many parents nowadays. For boarding education is indeed a superior form of education. In my humble opinion, it is better than many of the international schooling that otherwise our child would be experiencing. Um, and I'm a firm believer in the merits of boarding education. If a family is interested in sending their boy potentially to a boarding school down the road, using the summer to engage the boy or girl into a summer program, which takes place in a boarding school, that type of boarding school summer program would be quite beneficial to allow the student to have some real life experience of what it's going to be like to be able to determine whether or not this is really for him or her, for that student to be able to determine that on his or her own. Next slide, please. So now in terms of framework, this is a framework for all education planning, all forms of education planning, not just summer planning. It's always starting with academic and then extracurricular, next social, then personal. Always this way. All right. This is the framework for any parent or any consultant to look at the development of the child, of the student, right, throughout the entire education career. Now, many parents, especially from Asia, they are very well versed with the academic component, right? We want our child to do well, to ace the academics, right? But more often than not, not as concerned or being not as aware of the importance of the other components. Extracurricular, yeah, I see that, many parents would insist that, oh, you got to learn to play your piano, you got to learn to do this, to do that. But these are more of a skill attainment type of angle. All right. But extracurricular has more to do with attaining a particular skill or talent. It is about exposure. It is about exposure to different forms of areas of interest and passions to develop the student's intrinsic interest in different areas. Social. Not as many parents are very aware of the need to develop their social skills, thinking that, oh, if they do well in school, academics, and they have some extracurricular, that's good enough. But that is actually not the case. If we were to develop our child for more wholesome development, and especially if down the road we're looking into going the American path, like the top American universities, more often than not, we will realize that they are looking at this four-quadrant framework: academic, extracurricular, social, and personal. Americans are very much into leadership. They are very much into their students' ability to collaborate with other peers and to actually lead the peers towards an agreed outcome, towards an agreed mission. The American approach in coming with the American approach, the Americans actually think about what makes an adult become successful down in life. And they came up with the answer that it's not just academics. It's not just learning about, how to do this and how to do that, extracurricular, how to do some sport, how to play some music. It has a lot more towards about having a natural curiosity towards learning, always able to roll up your sleeves and do things, and to do things with people, and to be very good with people. Because down in the adult life, the majority of the career would involve having our student, our child, later on working with other people in a team setting. Studying is a very solo thing. Although Americans are injected a little bit more project into the environment, but essentially it's still a very solo thing. Extracurricular tends to be a lot more collaborative. You play soccer game, you play baseball, right? You're in orchestra, right? You're in a school band, right? You do things with people. Right? social, and it's about developing your leadership skill, organizing different things together, student council, you know, organizing different events to be able to make things happen. All right. And ultimately, it's about personal growth and personal depth. So that's kind of the framework that we would advise our families to take in terms of planning for our child. Next slide, please. So ground rules. The first thing is during the summer, do what you can not typically do during the school year. All right. If you end up doing the same thing that you could have done during the school year in the summertime, that kind of defeats the purpose and it will lead to burning out. So the first thing that I usually would advise our parents not to do is tutoring, right? Because we already would get our child to do tutoring during the school year already. So let us not have to do tutoring again during the summer. The child's kind of mentally would get zoned out, burned out. Unless, of course, there are always reasons, special circumstances where we have no choice. But if we do have a choice, try to avoid things such as tutoring. Don't choose to do nothing, or like laissez-faire, let them decide what they want to do. No, it's not necessarily lead to the best outcome. Be directional. Parents direct how your child should spend his or her summer. Here, my audience is more about children 10 years old to 14 years old, that type of a period, middle school years, where they are still under the parents' control, under the parents' influence. Now, I do want to add in a point that busy does not mean productive. So don't just try to stuff the calendar, from 7 to 11 every day, kind of 7 days a week. And then, our child would therefore be able to have a very fruitful summer. Not necessarily. Be intentional, be purposeful. Busy does not necessarily mean productive. Next slide. Now, in terms of summer, how you spend the summer, overall, you can look from a location point of angle. You can do it locally. I'm in Singapore, or some parents are in Bangkok, some are in Kuala Lumpur, Jakarta, out here in Southeast Asia. Do it wherever locally. It's fine. We can do that. I personally would prefer overseas because during the school year, again, do what we cannot typically do during the school year. During the school year, the child is already studying in a day school. Many of our clients are studying in an international school, right? Already out here locally in our city. Well, during the summer, let's get out and experience a different geography, a different environment. That would be preferred. Of course, it requires time, it requires financial resources, but if we can afford it, that's what I would prescribe. Online, we can do some of that, but I would prefer at a later age. I would recommend at a later age. For a child between 10 years old to 14 years old, that of a younger middle school range, I usually would not recommend online. I would want them to spend more time with their peers. Next slide, please. Now, in terms of context, the child can spend time with the family. Of course, summer would be a great time for family gathering, reunion, for parents to spend time together with the child. That's always a good thing. All right. However, assuming parents do spend time with the child during the school year, again, then I would tend to recommend do something that can only be done during the summer, which is involved in more specific specialized programs. Summer programs, especially. Summer programs is a big industry, especially in America, and I would dare say globally nowadays. And there are a lot of very well thought out programs that take place only in the summer, right? We can do, travels during Christmas. We can do travel during Easter holiday break, right? But during the summertime, there are a lot of programs which are really good that take place only in the summer. So therefore, for tonight's purpose, I will spend a little bit more time talking about summer programs. Next slide, please. Now, in choosing a summer program, first, I usually would recommend we need to get our child's ownership. Needs to be driven by the student's own interests, guided by us though, right? So it's not like laissez-faire, you just pick whatever you want. No, it needs to be approved by the parents. So it's guided by the parents, but the child very much needs to have ownership. All right. So we therefore need to solicit what they're interested in. We need to observe what is good for them. Maybe we come up with a couple of good choices that we feel good about and let them pick among the choices that we already pre-approve. That usually would be how it works typically smoothly. In choosing a summer program, I would also like to go into areas that are usually not as well aware of by parents. Think about the social environment. Think about what type of students or peers we would want our child to hang out with, right? Some programs have different programs have a different type of marketing and target audience, and so therefore we should be mindful as to, okay, my child is joining that summer program, learning XYZ, maybe learning AI or learning, drawing and painting or learning music or learning debate, whatever it is. All right. What are the type of peers who will be joining? Now, I am more active in helping families to pick summer programs that exist, that take place in a boarding school environment. So therefore, I would also encourage our families to pick environments that are more international in nature. So therefore, when my child goes to America to go through a summer program, he will be making friends not only with local Americans, but also with friends from all over the world. Again, we want diversity. Again, new exposure, new experience. This is where our children learn best, is through exposure and experiences. Next would be to be mindful of independence and out of comfort zone. All right. We want to inject, again, new environments so as to help our child to develop the ability to manage himself or herself in a new environment, in face of new challenges. All right. So all in the purpose of helping them develop their independence, of furthering on their independence, that they can survive on their own. They can take care of themselves. That's what independence is all about, right? So therefore, we need to choose, as parents, we need to choose environments that are out of the comfort zone, but we need to determine the degree. If it's too drastic, they may not feel comfortable. All right. They may feel a little intimidated. So therefore, if it's too comfortable, they don't learn to grow as much. All right. The most comfortable place would be home, right? Imagine they do a summer program at home. They don't learn as much, they don't grow as much as if they'll be thrown out there. All right. They have to learn how to, let's say, do their own laundry, fold their own clothes. They have to learn to sweep the floor. They have to learn, to do things together with other community members. Again, learning to be independent. Next would be confidence building. Again, we need to think about what would be a productive or conducive to helping our child building confidence. Whatever program that we choose, whatever topic that we choose for our child, the end outcome should include gaining in confidence. That at the end of that summer, our child would come out of that summer program being more confident of himself or herself. That should be one of the objectives. Now, if we are being more pragmatic, thinking about education planning, a kind of an angle applying to different schools type of an angle, then I would add into the last element about being compatible, doing what is compatible with the upcoming school year's needs, with the needs in the upcoming school year. What type of needs in terms of extracurricular engagement? If we are looking into my child wanting to, let's say, to get into varsity volleyball, okay, maybe we might want to consider doing some volleyball training over the summer. If I'm looking into my child being more in making it to the orchestra, maybe I can do more practice in music. Or maybe if I want to engage my child more to be in the investment club that year, the next year, or foreign relations club next year, then maybe I can get my child to get a little bit more prepped up this year in terms of investment or foreign relations. So, depending on where we want our child to become in terms of extracurricular area in the upcoming school year, there might be certain areas that we want to help create some or develop some expertise on or awareness or familiarity on during this summer. So these are some of the basic parameters that I would usually encourage our families to think about in designing the summer program. Now, of course, if this is a little bit too much work, you can always hire someone like us, like an education consultant. That's what we do. And we do that year after year for family after family. So, feel free to speak to any one of us if choosing a summer program is indeed what you are wrestling with. Next slide, please. Goal setting. This is another area that I would usually do with my students before the summertime. I will sit down with them and, in each of the 4 pillars, as I mentioned, academic, extracurricular, social, personal, we would lay down goals, summer goals in each developmental area. What are the things that you want to achieve this coming summer in terms of academics? I want to read more books, right? I want to be able to write faster or write better, right? I want to be better in my clarinet, talent, or I want to be exposed. I want to learn one new musical instrument. I want to learn drums, for example, right? In terms of social, right? I want to meet more friends. I want to meet more people around the world, right? In terms of personal, it could be I want to be more independent. I want to be able to make it by myself to travel from New York back to Singapore by myself on a flight, right? It could be, one of the things that a child would want to achieve, right? What are some of the game plans to achieve them? So we'll sit down with the child to start coming up with a game plan. So, okay, exactly how do you aim to achieve your objectives? And we also talk about, well, how do you measure achievement? So these are good old goal setting, techniques that we would employ with our students year round, but including also summer. Since today's topic is about summer planning, I would also throw this into our audience awareness that perhaps you can also consider, doing goal setting with your child before summer begins. Next slide, please. This is the last slide. And perhaps this is the most important slide, I would say, in this webinar. And that's the slide on reflections. When a child grows in maturity, that usually is tied to their ability to reflect, to self-reflect. That's what maturity comes from. It's not just endlessly, keep learning new knowledge or new talent, new skills, but it's really about living in this world, always developing the methodology to self-reflect and to reflect upon our experiences and to come up with game plan to make it better going forward. So one of the tools that I would generally use for our students would be for ongoing self-monitoring. I would usually ask them to do a simple daily journals. I ask them to promise, you're going to do a daily journal, right? It doesn't matter how long or how short, just write something at the end of each day. The idea of a journal is really for the child to highlight the ups and downs of each day, not just to talk about what I did, but more importantly, how I felt. Again, we want our child to have this ability to be able to reach deep into himself or herself, to understand their feelings, to understand what makes them feel good, what makes them feel not good. A lot of times when I ask our students to do journals, they start off with saying, okay, this is what I did in the morning. I had my breakfast, I da 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 da. And it's pretty dry. It's like every day you're just reporting what you did. Not until they started having their ability to reflect and start how I felt. Oh, today I felt great. Um, I, um, I met a great friend, for example, right? Or today I felt terrible because I had an argument with my friend, right? So these are things that would help a young teenager to develop the ability to reach inside himself or herself for a deeper understanding. That's maturity. Now, I would usually also at the end of the summer, we will do a post-program review or post-summer review. And I'll ask, these 5 questions. What do I value the most about the experience? That's what I will ask my students to answer. What do I value the most about this summer experience? How have I grown during the experience? How am I different after versus before? How am I different now as a result of this experience? What more about myself have I learned from the experience? Over this past 3 months, what have I learned more about myself? If I could do it over again, how would I have done it differently? Again, it's about reflecting. It's about reflecting on the goods and on the bads or the not so goods, right? It's to think about how to improve. This is a key survival skill, a lifelong skill, right? For students to be able to constantly in a perpetual loop of self-monitoring and self-reflecting and self-improvement. And last, I would ask them, what do you want to experience next? All right. So now that you have gone through this summer and experienced all that, what do you want to learn next? And leading to the next summer. And in this case, we're actually leading our child to learn to think in advance, maybe a year in advance. Maybe that's too long. They don't even know what I'm going to do next week, right? But, it doesn't hurt to ask them, all right, now that we have learned this over this past summer, what's your plan? What do we want to learn over next summer? And let's hear what they have to say. In this type of conversation, we are subconsciously training our child to be more long-term oriented, to be able to plan more in advance. So that concludes our webinar for today in terms of summer planning. I hope the families have found it helpful in terms of planning the summer for your child. If you need any help, we are always around. We are Sesameed. We're an education planning consultancy. We specialize in education planning. We specialize in helping our students build their profile, especially for application towards boarding schools and universities. So if you have any questions about your child's education path, be it about the summer or throughout regular school year, about the next step, please do not hesitate to reach out to any one of us. Thank you very much. Thank you for listening. And I wish you a very happy and productive, fruitful summer ahead.